UFC Kansas City this Saturday night. Welcome into the Gamble and Gains UFC preview for Garry versus Prates. We have 14 fights coming your way, a full card, and I will give you a prediction on each and every one of those fights, as well as some best bets along the way. I've got chapters below if you are looking for a specific fight, and I've got the full card rundown on the right side of the screen for you to follow along. All right, let's get right into fight number one. Leading off on ESPN Plus, we have a bantamweight battle between Chelsea Chandler and Jocelyn Edwards. This is a bit of a tough fight to judge starting off the night. While Edwards was impressive, locking in a face crank submission in her last bout, she had dropped her previous two. And Chandler has been trading wins and losses since joining the UFC, with an impressive win in her debut over Julia Stoliarenko. Both of these fighters missed weight by 4+ pounds in their last fight. And that's really the story here, is that both of these fighters have been struggling to make weight as of late. So while it seems to affect Chandler greatly last time, losing in that unanimous decision, Edwards is still able to put together that solid outing, likely winning those first two rounds before locking in that round 3 submission. So my prediction for this fight is that Edwards continues the streak she's been on and gets that W. There's going to be no best bet or any type of bet at all for me right now. I really need to see what's going to happen on weigh-in day first. I can certainly be convinced to flip this pick. You know, if Edwards comes away overweight, Chandler comes in and it looks good, I could definitely be convinced. You know, these fighters seem fairly even and inconsistent, honestly, in their recent days. So, you know, plus 239 for Chandler is a little bit intriguing. But again, with just those weight struggles for both of these fighters, I have a really hard time backing either one of them. So, prediction, Edwards wins, probably as a decision. I don't think you can really bet the over here either. So not really looking at any props, but an interesting fight to start the night. We'll see how both fighters do on weigh-in and how they perform, assuming they can both actually make weight for once. Moving on to Timmy Cuamba and Robert Romero. This is an intriguing matchup that, again, like that first fight, looks a little bit hard to judge. And odds makers seem to agree here, with this fight currently priced near a pick'em. We have a case of two extremely motivated fighters, both looking for their first victory inside the octagon, as Cuamba comes in at 0-2 in the UFC and Romero 0-1. This also looks to be a case of styles making fights, as Cuamba comes in with 4 knockout victories in his career, while Romero has 2 submissions. So my prediction, and again, we're not going to have a bet here, but my prediction for this fight is going to go for Timmy. Right, so after fighting 3 times in 2024, I think he finally gets his hand raised in the UFC. Betting perspective, like I said, no pre-bet fight. But I think this could be an opportunity to live wager if you have that option. Right, so we have Romero, submission. Cuamba wants to go for the knockout. He wants to stay on the feet. I think if this fight stays on the feet, you go with Timmy. If this fight goes to the ground, Romero has some successful takedown attempts. He's getting in the clinch a lot, getting close to takedowns. I think maybe you go Romero, right, with a live bet there. But as for before the fight, I think this is evenly matched. I think it's hard to judge. Odds makers seem to agree. I think we start to let this fight play out before we really want to make any type of decision. That said, my prediction is for Timmy here, but I would not bet this pre-fight at all. All right, moving along to Jacqueline Amorim and Polyana Viana. So Amorim comes in on an impressive run of late after dropping her UFC debut. So she's 3-1 in the UFC. She's on a 3-fight win streak. 3 straight finishes as she climbs those straw weight rankings, with those last 2 by armbar. In fact, you're going to notice this with both of these fighters. None of them have ever won a decision. And that is going to show a little bit later, and we'll get into that. But all 9 of Amorim's victories have been by finish. We went 100% finish rate. And now on the other side, we have Polyana Viana, 13-7. All 13 of her wins have come by finish as well. Now, she's really struggled since joining the UFC. She is 4-6 in the UFC. She's been here for some time now, but I think the odds makers are probably right here. I mean, Viana does have the ability to potentially pull off the upset, but Amorim being the heavy favorite is probably the way that this is going to go. So now earlier in the week, you see this. They both have this high finishing rate. It's a women's fight. Maybe this is going to be priced pretty good for the under, like under 2.5 is kind of where I was hoping I was going to be able to go with the best bet here. Unfortunately, it is priced at minus 250, and this probably ends in a finish, but I cannot take a women's strawweight fight at minus 250 at under 2.5 rounds. I mean, is it going to end in a finish? Probably, but to me, that's a lot to ask from the value sense at minus 250. I don't love that there. So we're going to go with no bet here. I mean, this should be a fun fight that ends in a finish, and I think it's one that we should really just sit back, watch, and enjoy. Up next, we have a rookie versus Cameron Saaiman. So Saaiman is 24 years old and already his 6th fight in the UFC. Now, before losing his last 2 fights, Cameron had an incredible start to his UFC career with 3 straight wins, including 2 knockouts. Now, on the other side, Malcolm Wellemaker comes in undefeated, making his UFC debut, and he has been proving that he is dangerous on both the feet and on the ground. He's got 4 knockouts. He's got 2 submissions. While the 4-inch reach may be an advantage for Malcolm here in this fight, I tend to stay away from UFC rookies when making selections, and I'm feeling no different here. Cameron comes in with all of the UFC experience, 3-2 in the UFC, a 9-2 record. So again, Cameron was 6-0 before entering into the UFC, and he actually started out 7-0, right? So he's got the skills, and he's going up against a rookie. He's got 5 fights in the UFC. Rookie has no fights in the UFC. So to me, his proven ability to win in the past, so it's not just the fact that he's a UFC veteran, it's the fact that he has wins in the octagon as a UFC veteran. I'm giving the nod to Cameron here. We're going to go with a prediction and my first best bet of the night, Cameron Saaiman. That is what we got. First best bet of the night, Cameron Saaiman. Now, what I will say is if you have access to a sports book that lets you pick fight of the night, now, this is rare. I think MGM has thrown it around on occasion. I typically only see it for pay-per-views, but I would say look around. I think this one has a really good shot to be fight of the night. Wellemaker is a very talented young fighter who's making his UFC debut, and, Cameron's lost his last 2 fights, but again, he's 24 years old. This is already his 6th fight in the UFC. That is not something to take lightly. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think this could be fight of the night. I'm going with the underdog here at plus 103, Cameron Saaiman as the prediction and the best bet. Moving on, we have Blackshear and Alatengheili. So we have the odds makers kind of think that Blackshear is going to run away with this one at minus 533 versus Alatengheili, who is plus 378, and I'm going to have to agree, and I'm going to put that check mark up early here. I think Blackshear kind of comes in and dominates this fight. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to pick an under or to say by submission. I think Blackshear can just come in and smother this fight, and I think he gets the win. So, Blackshear, 3-2 in his last 5 after dropping 2 straight. He has ripped off 2 straight submission victories over some pretty good UFC talent that's been here for a while, over Cody Stamann and Cody Gibson. With his latest over Gibson coming just 1 month ago. So he is very, very fresh. Now, Alatengheili has been stuck fighting on the lower end of the weight class with kind of mixed results, right? So you see he's 5-2-1 in the UFC. He's been kind of fighting for a while now, but as I mentioned, odds makers have this priced right, meaning no bet, right? So I don't think there's a bet to be made here. I think minus 533 is probably accurate, which means if the number's accurate, we don't play it because there's no value there. So as far as props go, I'm also likely going to stay away from this one as well. Just because I can see Blackshear winning any type of way, so I don't want to kind of stick us in a corner with this fight and only let Blackshear win one type of way, because he could win this in a multitude of ways. And that's kind of the way that I see this fight going. Up next, we have Chris Gutierez and John Castaneda. Now, both fighters come in with this with a little bit of mixed bag in terms of consistency, and you do kind of see this a lot on these fight night cards. Right, they're not your pay-per-view main event guys, so there's going to be a little bit of inconsistency, and that's going to be a little bit hard to judge whether we should be making bets or just predictions or whatnot, right? So Gutierrez comes in alternating wins and losses, with his last outing a victory over Quang Lee by decision. Now, he does have a very memorable win, and this comes against Frankie Edgar, but this was back in 2022 with a KO by knee. Now, Castaneda dropped his last fight to Daniel Marcos last June by decision after winning his previous 2 fights by decision. Like Gutierrez, Castaneda's last win by finish came back in 2022 when he won by arm triangle submission. Now, the inconsistency from both fighters makes this a tough one to pick, like I kind of had mentioned, and one I definitely can't put any money on or behind at this point, but I will go with Gutierrez to get the win here. I think he's just been a little bit better as of late. I mean, not betting on him here. This is just my thought on who is going to win the fight is probably Chris Gutierrez. Now, earlier in the week, I was hoping that maybe I could get the overpriced at like, I don't know, minus 200, minus 250 if I was lucky, because I think this fight probably goes the distance. Right? Like I said, neither fighter has recorded a finish victory since 2022, so that's going on almost 3 years now. There is no bet on an over here. That right now is currently sitting at minus 400, which again, probably priced correctly, which means no bet for us. Next up, we have Evan Elder squaring off against UFC rookie and late add to the card, Gage Young, at 155 pounds in the lightweight division. Elder came into the UFC boasting a 7-0 record and promptly dropped his first 2 fights. Now, it can be a big jump coming from those smaller promotions to the octagon for a lot of fighters, and some never recover. Elder, though, seems to have figured it out, though, with back-to-back victories to get that UFC record up to 2-2, and he comes in with a lot of momentum. On the other side with Young, there are some real concerns. First of all, he's taking this fight on about a week's notice as a UFC rookie. You already know I don't like UFC rookies. I like them even less coming in on a week's notice. His only fight of note recently against more top-end competition was in the Dana White Contender Series, where he actually lost. Although he is 4-1 in his recent bouts, that one loss, again, coming Dana White Contender Series. The pick here has to be Elder, and I'm actually got 2 best bets on this fight in particular. We're going to go with Evan Elder at minus 200, as well as the under on 2.5 rounds, and this is priced right now at plus 190. Now, fighters on short notice tend to gas quickly, but on the off chance that Young does win this fight, all of his last 4 wins have come by knockout. Now, I expect Elder to get the TKO victory with Young coming in. He's probably going to be gassed. He doesn't have the experience of fighting in the UFC. It's a big moment for him, for sure. I mean, he's a UFC rookie. Who wouldn't it be a big moment for? I see him gassing kind of quick, and Elder's been training for this fight for a couple months now. I think Elder takes care of business, and I think he takes care of it within the distance. Final fight on ESPN Plus, we have Matt Schnell and Jimmy Flick. So I don't really understand how Schnell can be a minus 282 favorite when he's coming in 1-4 in his last 5. He had a good start to his UFC career at 4-2 record, but I mean since then 1-4, and that lone victory in his last 5 came all the way back in 2022 against Sumaderje, who we just saw win rather unimpressively by split decision at UFC 314. Now, while Flick hasn't been overly impressive, this line just seems wrong right now, and I'll be interested to see where this moves throughout the week as we get closer to fight night. Schnell is certainly the more experienced fighter at the UFC level, but both fighters sit at just one win below 500, and both are really desperate to get a win here. I have a prediction and a best bet, and they are both going to be on Jimmy Flick. I'll be looking possibly for a long shot of the night for Flick by submission at anything above plus 500. So maybe check back later in the week. I'll probably put out a long shot of the night video or a short at some point. Too early in the week to see, who they got winning by knockout or decision. We do have some on those later fights rather. Garry and Prates have it, but Flick and Schnell don't yet. Flick, as you can see, 15-0 winning by submission. Only 2 of his career wins have actually come by decision. I think Flick's got a real shot at pulling off the sub here as well. Now, if you really want a long shot, you're going to want to head over to BetMGM, probably on Friday, and you're going to be looking at Flick to win by arm triangle choke, which I expect to be in the about plus 1,000 range. If you can get it plus 1,000, plus 1,200, maybe quarter unit, half unit, whatever you're comfortable with. As I mentioned, Flick's last 5 victories have all come by submission. 3 of those, including his last, was by an arm triangle, and it's become a bit of a specialty move for Flick. All right, let's go head on over to ESPN2 for that main event. We're going to lead it off with Aliskerov and Muniz. Now, Aliskerov came back to reality in his last fight after losing to Robbie Whittaker by TKO. Many a great fighter have gone down to Robbie by TKO, and he had been on a serious rise before that last loss. He had won his first 2 UFC fights by TKO, and he got his shot in the UFC winning by submission on the Dana White Contender Series back in 2022. Now, Aliskerov will step into the octagon a big favorite when he takes on Muniz on the other side. Muniz is a UFC veteran coming in with a 6-2 record. Now, he comes off a split decision victory after dropping his previous 2 fights. So, not a great run of late in his last 3, right? So you see his last 5, he's 3-2. That means he started the UFC 3-0, and that last win, it's a split decision, so that's really a toss-up. So he hasn't really been impressive in a while now. He had a really nice run from 2020 to 2022, taking out the likes of Jacare, Souza, Eric Anders, Uriah Hall, but then again, he dropped 2 of 3 in 2023, and he took all of 2024 off. So I can really see why Aliskerov has that heavy favorite at minus 650 next to his name. So we're going to go no best bet, but Aliskerov to win as the prediction. Up next, we have UFC veterans Randy Brown and Nicholas Dalby squaring off in a welterweight clash. This is an interesting one, right? Brown comes in winning 3 of his last 5, but did drop his last bout in December by split decision. He's been a really, really well-balanced fighter throughout his career. You can kind of look at his record over there. 7-2 knockouts, 5-2 in submissions, 7-2 in decisions. So he can win on the feet. He can win on the ground. He's very comfortable with that. We look to the other side. So is Nicholas Dalby, right? He is 23-5-1 in his career. He is 6-2 in the UFC. He is the underdog here at plus 195, and he's the elder by 6 years at 40 years old. So, like Brown, Dalby had a pretty nice win streak going before losing his last fight there by split decision as well as Brown did. Now, this happened about a year ago for Dalby. So, he is 40 years old now. Just based off the last few fights, I'm a little bit more impressed with Dalby, so I'm going to take him with a prediction, but I don't have a ton of confidence here. To me, this is not a pre-fight wager that I'm willing to make on Dalby. Now, the fight starts. Dalby looks good. Maybe he wins round 1. I think even if you're like, oh, well, I'm getting a discount now at plus 100, that's probably a fair price to pay to see if the 40-year-old has still got it, right? And on the other side, Brown, you're not missing out. I mean, on that much. I don't think there's enough value there at minus 238 to bet him. And if he is taking care of Dalby, that's going to skyrocket to minus 400, minus 500 live. I think the opportunity here is probably for Dalby live. Both of these fighters have been going to decisions a lot more recently. I looked at the over. It is minus 275. Again, cannot play it. It was kind of disappointing at looking at a lot of these overs and unders. Right, we did pretty well in UFC 314. Right, my two favorite plays of the night were both unders. They were under 2.5, and they both cashed pretty easily, I would say. I don't really see that here so far on this card. I mean, over at minus 275, there is no value there at all. The fight probably goes to decision. My prediction is Dalby. I don't have any confidence in that. I need to see him actually fight first before I say that. The record favors him. He's been a little bit more impressive. But then on the other side, Brown's got the reach. This fight could really go either way. So I kind of want to see how that first round's playing out before I make any types of decisions. But prediction Dalby. Fight probably goes over. We're not betting the over here either. Third fight on the main event on ESPN2 features Michael Pereira and Abus Magomedov. I want to start with Magomedov on the right here first because his road to this fight has been interesting to me. So after winning his UFC debut by knockout, he immediately gets thrown to the top end of this weight class. He's fighting Sean Strickland, suffers a loss. He's fighting Cuamba Bahio, suffers a loss. So since then, he took a step back down in competition, and he started a nice 2-fight win streak for himself against Warlley Alves, and then was able to submit Bruno Ferreira last October. So while only 3-2 in the UFC, I think it's fair to say that number is a bit deceiving based off of who he's faced so early on in his UFC career, right? We don't see guys typically fight at the top end that quickly, and he did, and he struggled, but he seems to have come back from it, which is pretty impressive to me. Now, on the other side, we have Michael Pereira, who before dropping his last fight to Anthony Hernandez had amassed an 8-fight win streak. So impressive in his own right. Both guys are very well-balanced fighters, as you can see from both of their records in fights ending in TKO and in submission. My prediction and best bet here, though, is going to be on Abus Magomedov. I think he continues that streak. The UFC clearly saw something in him to put him up in that upper echelon of fighters in that weight class. Now, he wasn't ready for it yet, but he's bounced back with those 2 victories. I think he gets another one here. I love that he's priced as the underdog. I also love that he has that 5-inch reach advantage. Now, losing back-to-back fights in the UFC can be devastating to a new fighter, but he's been able to weather that storm and come back clearly much stronger. A good win over Warlley Alves, and then that submission victory in his last time out. So again, I'm going prediction and best bet, Abus Magomedov. We got plus 113. 3 fights left. We have Giga Chikadze and David Onama. Starting with Giga, he has cooled off significantly since winning 3 straight fights by TKO, dropping 2 of his last 3. But to note, 2 of those 3 knockouts came against Cub Swanson and Edson Barbosa. So, pretty good competition that he was knocking out there. This is a guy that is really going to want to keep that fight standing against Onama, as we see that 9-0 record in fights ending in TKO. Onama is the favorite here and comes in with 3 straight wins, but this is a big step up in competition for him. Giga has been fighting ranked guys in the division for a while now, and while Onama has looked good with that 5-2 record since joining the UFC, a win here would really put him on the map, right? This is 3 fights down from the main event. This is when people are really tuning in. This is when people are really watching. So a good performance here could go a long way for Onama's career. The momentum is hard to ignore, but my prediction is that Giga is ready to get this win. There is something to be said for facing the best of the best in the weight class for a 2+ year span. He knows what a true contender should look like. Now, if Onama had been running through and knocking out all of his recent opponents, I think I'd probably have to flip this here. And again, that's why I don't really have a best bet. I think Onama has been good. He could be better. And when does that switch flip? Does that switch flip? Does this higher profile fight that he's now getting bring something out of him that we haven't seen in a little bit? I can't confidently say that one way or the other. So I'm going to go with the more experienced fighter in Giga here. Now, we move on to the co-main event of the evening. In the light heavyweight division, we have MMA veteran Anthony Lionheart Smith up against a tough task in the young and rising talent Zhang Mingyang. Smith comes in dropping 2 of his last 5 and seems to have lost that iron chin he had in years past, suffering 3 knockout losses all since 2022. While he did pick up a victory in 2024, he lost his last 2 fights in that very active year. Zhang comes in with a 10-fight knockout streak, including his first 2 UFC fights. He won them both by knockout as well. So none of that drop off in power that you see sometimes, right? We saw Evan Elders come to the UFC with that undefeated record, and he dropped a couple of fights. Not Mingyang. He came in and he won both of his fights by knockout. So he gets a big test in Anthony Smith, but I think it's one that he can and should be able to handle. You see that with what the odds makers have set here. Zhang Mingyang is at -500. So my official prediction is Mingyang to defeat Anthony Lionheart Smith, but there is no best bet as right now the under is priced at -211 at under 1.5. So I can't bet that. That's probably a good number there. A lot of the totals that I would normally like are just a little bit too rich for me this week. Maybe later in the week we look at a prop of Mingyang by knockout. That's clearly the way he wants to end fights these days with that 10-fight win streak. He did start his career more of a submission expert, right? That 6-2 record. But again, those last 10 fights tell you a lot, as well as his first 2 fights in the UFC, both by knockout. No bet right now, but Mingyang is my prediction to win. And we finally get to the main event of the evening. We have Ian Machado Garry and Carlos Prates. Garry and Prates, this is a close fight. Odds makers believe that. It is -136 Garry, +108 Prates. First, let's take a look at Garry, who has been dominant his entire career. He finally received his first MMA loss back in December in a defeat to Shavkat Rakhmonov. This fight was in a decision victory. Garry has 3 wins by knockout in the UFC alone, and his other 5 wins have all come by decision. That submission came before he was in the UFC. He has excellent cardio. He is an expert at going the distance. He's done it many times, right? He's got 5 victories in the UFC by decision, and I think that will be a key factor if this heads into those championship rounds. It's not a championship fight, but it is a 5-round fight because it is the main event. So it's still those championship rounds, those 4th and 5th rounds. We can see a lot of good fighters kind of melt away there. So Garry's going up against a rising star in Carlos Prates. So Prates joined the promotion last year. He fought 4 times in 2024 and won all 4 of those fights by TKO. Prates comes into this fight with a reach advantage as well as seemingly the power advantage. Again, those last 4 fights he ended by knockout. He is on an 11-fight win streak and a 10-fight knockout streak. Just like Mingyang in that previous fight, Prates also has a 10-fight knockout winning streak on his side. He has not gone the distance, though, since December of 2019. And so I think there are probably 2 ways to play this fight. If you like Garry, I think it's Garry by decision that could be the good move for you here. So Garry, again, he does go the distance. 5 of his 8 UFC victories have gone the distance, and Prates has not gone the distance in any fight since 2019. So this fight gets dragged into those deep waters of the 4th and 5th round. I say big time advantage for Garry. And now, if you like Prates, a win by KO seems to be his best path to victory, right? He's got that 10-fight win streak by knockout, and he's going to want to avoid those championship rounds. He's going to want to end this fight in the 1st or that 2nd round. Now, while I think that is probably what happens, so my prediction is Carlos Prates to win, my best bet is actually going to be under 2.5 at plus 160. We finally have an under that I like, or total that I like, I should say. This is going to be at plus 160, under 2.5 rounds. So why would I play this, right? We know that I like Prates to win by knockout. Well, FanDuel has actually released the odds for, fighter to win by knockout, fighter to win by this, that, and the other thing. So that's where I got that Ian Garry number from, that plus 270, which I actually kind of like. If you like Garry, picking Garry to win by decision is probably the way to go. On the flip side, they have Prates to win by KO at plus 180, but the fight to go under 2.5 rounds at plus 160. So you're getting a lot better value on that plus 160 because Garry, he does have 3 knockouts in the UFC, and we know Prates is going to come out swinging, so Garry could certainly win this fight by knockout as well early on in this fight. I believe Prates is going to win. That is my prediction that he wins, but we are going to go with the under 2.5 at plus 160. That wraps up this card. That wraps up this main event. Let's go ahead to the best bets recap. Starting off, our first bet of the night is going to be on Cameron Saaiman at plus 103. Then we have Evan Elder at minus 200. In that same fight, we're also going to be taking the under at plus 190. After that, we'll have Jimmy Flick at plus 213. Abis Magomedov at plus 113. And then our last pick of the night for now is going to be Garry Prates in the main event, going under 2.5 rounds at plus 160. What I will say, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. As we move throughout the week, we get more and more information. We get more and more props that come available. Some things that we're, looking at to maybe be playing later in the week based on what it looks like. Zhang Mingyang knockout. Prates, maybe that knockout number changes a little bit. Maybe we look at playing Prates in the 1st round or Prates in the 2nd round at a juicy like plus 1,000, something like that. We want to see what Jimmy Flick looks like by submission. All these things are not out there yet. As they come out there, if we like them, I'll either put out a short or an updated video. I will have a long shot of the weekend. There's usually one good bet you can find for a long shot. I don't see anything out there quite yet, but stay tuned for that, and I will get you guys something very soon. Again, if you liked what you saw, please be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to bet smart and lift heavy.